What's up, Line Cook Nation? This is Ray DeLucci with the Line Cook Thoughts podcast. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you all are staying safe. Very excited because if you're watching this on video, you'll see that we've started video on the podcast. I want to start just recording video, whether it's a solo podcast or, as you might have seen some clips go up on Instagram. I'm working on getting some of the recorded video interviews on YouTube and Instagram as well. And the reason for this is because, as the brand evolves, as the podcast evolves, I would love to have more outlets for people to see this conversation. And as I've started to move towards video in terms of recording, it's always been kind of just audio only. As I move towards video, I think it would be cool for you all to see kind of the conversation in person. So if video is more your thing, I'm happy that we're providing this, and I'm just happy to play around with it and, get better at it over time. But yeah, I'm really excited to have video up and running, and I think it'll be good. And I think it'll allow us to just have a more diverse amount of content and be able to get some more messaging across in terms of what we want to see out of the industry. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, just really excited for today's episode. Today is a solo episode. And today's episode is going to be important to me because, as we get into this new way of dealing with COVID and, just this new way of life that we've kind of been in over the last year and a half, I think it's important that, we look at those coming into the industry right now. I'm 24. I've been in the industry 10 years. And even though I, have so much more to learn, have so much more to see and do and experience in the food world, I think it's important to, I've been in 10 years. I think it's important for me to give at least some sort of advice or share some lessons on what I've learned so far in the industry. And this advice might not be for everyone, and it might, you might disagree with my advice, but from what I've learned, and I've been able to manage myself in a way where I feel like my career is going the way I want it to. I feel fulfilled. Right now I'm in a spot where I have good work-life balance. I think the work I do is very meaningful. I really enjoy my career right now. And there were definitely times where I didn't. And there were definitely times where it was very difficult. And there were definitely moments where I wish I would have just put more importance or weight into certain things, such as work-life balance or, mental health care or anything else that might be important to someone in the industry right now that's working. And it doesn't have to be just in restaurants. When I say the industry, I'm talking about the entire food industry. So, e-commerce or, just managing multiple businesses, working in restaurant chains or groups, anything involved with food, front of house work. And so this is just some advice from one person's point of view, who's been in the industry 10 years, who also talks to cooks daily for the last almost 3 years, and other people in the food world. And I just wanted to share kind of some advice. If someone were to be like, all right, I'm starting in the food world tomorrow, I'm going to embark on this career, what advice could you give me? And this would be what I would give. So one of the biggest things, or one of the most important things I would say when starting in food, is connections. Connections are key. Whether it's in your city or it's across the web, that's such an old word. Whether it's online, via LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, however you communicate with people, connections are key, and they're super important. They've been super important for me. And I don't want to just say connections, really. It's like friendships and your ability to go meet and interact with other people. It's so integral and important, in my opinion, in food, because you'll often hear that it's a small industry, and more often than not, you'll run into people more than once. Even if you move across the country, it always ends up being that in food, you always run into people that you might have worked with before, or their name pops up in a certain way, or you meet them at a certain conference, or you meet them just online, or you guys connect like years down the road. It seems like no one ever really goes away in food. And so the biggest thing is relationships. So I would say that's the most important thing. When you start out in food, if you're anything like me, you're very hungry and you have a chip on your shoulder and you want to prove yourself and you want to do better than everyone else. And you'll learn really quick that it's actually a team mentality that will probably get you farther along in your career. Yes, you want to work hard. Yes, you want your own personal success. But if you act like I acted when I first got into food, I really felt like it was just me against the world, and I had to prove myself, and I had to really put myself out there. And I'll say that cooking didn't come natural to me. It took me some time to learn the basics, and it took me a good amount of time to be able to get, good at cooking, to be able to cook what I wanted, to be able to feel comfortable holding a knife and be able to cook on an open flame. It takes time. It takes years to get comfortable, not get great, get comfortable at cooking. And so that's the biggest thing first, though, is just the connections you make. Finding a good restaurant, finding a good mentor. If you're going a different route in food, finding a good business, just somewhere that, you're able to learn the correct skills from. mentorship is such a big thing. And I've talked to people that don't have mentors. Mentors aren't the key to your success, but they definitely help you get there in a different way, because when you have someone guiding you, when you have someone focused on your growth and development, it's more than one person. And like I said, in food, a team is always better. And so when you have someone to rely on and you're able to vet your decisions and you're able to talk about your mistakes and kind of get different perspectives that maybe you wouldn't get because you don't have that experience, it really helps you grow, and it helps you just see food in a different way, and it helps you manage your career in a different way. And if it's not a mentor, it's a restaurant. And if it's not a restaurant, it's a business. But finding that first good, solid place to learn. Now, not everyone's fortunate to get, like my first job was at Wendy's when I started in food. So, of course, like that isn't where I would want to go, or I would recommend people going if they're going to like if they want to learn the fundamentals on like how to make a hollandaise or how to learn brunoise or julienne cuts. Like that's not where I would that's not where you're going to learn that. But there's skills in every position, and there's skills in every job that you can carry over into your next one. And so while I might not have learned how to make the hollandaise at Wendy's, I did learn speed, I did learn efficiency, customer satisfaction, being able to talk to guests. And they sound like small things, but all those things do add up over time, and it's all those experiences that matter way down in your career. Do I have Wendy's on my resume? No, of course not, because I have had better jobs and I've had better experiences. But that did lead to me, having some skills and having a sense of urgency, which helped me out in my first professional kitchen job. So finding a good spot, and even if you're in a spot where you're like, yeah, I know this isn't like the best spot to learn food, being able to take away the skills and the lessons you can while working in that business or that job, it's super important. We'll get into this a little bit, but your job is in food. It's not just in cooking, and a lot of food, in my opinion, is being able to work with and communicate with and empathize with others, with people. We're in the hospitality business. It's the art of serving others. And so any job that you have that involves working with people or having customers, like that all does mean something. And so I would say that. But finding a good mentor or finding a restaurant or just someone that excites you, a leader, someone that you can look up to and just be like, okay, that person I see something in them that I kind of want for myself. I think that's super important. It was integral for me. Some of my mentors, Cody, Ross, Dwayne, Suzanne, they were all people I look up to. Craig, there's so many. There's so many people in my career so far that have been mentors to me. The list goes on. And a mentor doesn't have to be someone that you're with your whole career. My longest mentor, the time they were my mentor, actively, yes, I still go to them for advice, but working under them was about 2 years. And so it's important that you have different people with different perspectives and that you're open to it. And we're going to kind of go into learning and kind of, saying restaurants, no restaurants. And obviously the topic's going to come up of culinary school and whether it's whether it's needed. And I'll say that culinary school is not needed as a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. It isn't needed. There's definitely people who have made a successful career out of food and they never step foot in a culinary school. And I'll just share my experience, because if you're starting out, I'm sure you're debating it. And I don't want to say it's not needed in a way that's it's not important. I do think culinary school is important. It's important for me. It got me amazing opportunities, made amazing connections, the friendships I gained in culinary school, the people I met. I don't think I'd be on the route I am now. And it's definitely been important in my life. I don't know if I'd be doing this if I didn't go, because everything that I've done so far in my life has shaped me into who I am right now. So what I'm trying to say, though, is that, in some cases, culinary school might not be an option for some, or maybe you just don't want to go back to school, or maybe you have a good opportunity elsewhere. And so I would say that if you, culinary school isn't the only thing that's going to make you a good chef. You can get experience elsewhere. You can make it. If you cannot go to culinary school, it's not like you're always going to be behind in food. But I will say that at the culinary school that I went to, and others that I've talked to, it gives you a good foundation. But more so for me, yes, I learned a ton about cooking, about restaurant service. I've got great experiences. But for me, it was the connections. And going back to the connection piece, the connections I made at school allowed me to get a great job out of college. It allowed me to keep in touch with people to have on the podcast or get help with in terms of promoting stuff I wanted to do, or just staying in touch as friends. The friendships I made, my best friends are all from culinary school. So it's and yes, it's expensive. There is a price tag to it. I do have student loans, and you look at that and it's like, some people might not want to go into debt. And so that's all fair and it's all valid. And I don't think there's a right or no answer. I think it depends on the person. But I would say that it's not the end all be all, and it's not going to make you a bad chef if you don't end up going to culinary school. But at the same time, there is value in it. So it's more of a personal decision. Obviously, it's like with your financial status, what you're able to get with federal aid. Even if you want to go in debt, for me, that's something I'm comfortable with. I was comfortable with doing. I was able to go to culinary school, and I have to pay that off. But I'm grateful for it, and I'm comfortable with where I'm at. And I think it's important that I went, but it might not be for everyone. Not everyone is meant to be in a school, and everyone wants to be in a school anymore. And once you leave high school, like a big allure to kitchens is that, you don't have to do like so much so like be in school anymore or be in that like, environment where you're not really moving or working a lot. And so I definitely get that. I just want to make it clear that not going to culinary school doesn't mean you're going to not be successful in food, because many people have done it. And yeah, but also another big thing is just make sure when you're looking at culinary schools that it fits what you're looking for. And this is going to be an important point that I really need anyone listening into food to start, is that it could be, and most likely for some of you, there is a possibility that you will not work in kitchens your whole career. I am not working in kitchens now. In a traditional sense, I do not work in restaurants right now. I work in more of an R&D role, or I want to say R&D, but more so like food manufacturing, like assessing data or making sure product works in a food manufacturing setting is kind of how I would describe it. And that's something I'm really interested in. But I would have never thought I'd be in this role when I started out in the beginning, when I was looking at the food industry. I wanted to own a restaurant. I wanted to be a chef that did fine dining like that. I feel like that's what most people want to do when they start out. They want to be that chef that everyone looks up to, the rock star chef, the celebrity. Maybe not the celebrity, but someone who puts out good food. It's understandable. That's what is promoted online. It's what has always fascinated the general public. But I would say just I feel like when I started in food, that I knew that's what I wanted to do, or that's what I thought I wanted to do. And so I often turned my nose up or turned away other opportunities or other possibilities in food. And I would often see those as lesser, or, if you weren't in restaurants, you kind of have like failed type mentality. And as I started to get more and more involved in food and get more and more involved in like what it means to be in the food industry, I realized that there's so many opportunities out there. And for me, like working in restaurants isn't something I wanted to do the rest of my life. At a certain point, I wanted to try other things. I'm really interested in food business and food e-commerce, just the whole range of things. Like I want to taste it all. I want to see it all. I want to be involved in everything food. And so for me, limiting myself to just restaurants wasn't what I wanted to do with my career. I wanted to go elsewhere and see other things. That might not be the case for you. It could be that you just want to be in food, and then turns out you're in food the rest of your career, and that's totally fine. But I'm just saying be open to be open to things that aren't in food, because at a certain point your goals might switch, and there might have been opportunities that you could have taken that weren't just inside restaurants. It could be an R&D role, it could be in food media, it could be front of house. So just be aware of what is open to you, and there's nothing wrong with not being in kitchens the rest of your career. I feel like you're gonna feel that a lot. There's this imposter syndrome, or this intense pressure that if you leave kitchens, and you might hear it, because a lot of people, some people in kitchens are like this. They might be like, oh, if you're leaving restaurants, you're kind of selling out, or you're taking a lifestyle that's like weaker. And I can tell you that, like, yeah, I might not work 80 hours a week in regards to working in the restaurant, but I put in work outside of my job to work on Line Cook Thoughts, and I have so much going on in my life. I am busy, and it's like, I'm just choosing not to spend all of my time on one job. I'm choosing to spend it on other things I'm passionate about in life. And that's not to knock people that work 80 hours a week in food. That's the reality for a lot of people. I'm just saying that for me, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And there's nothing wrong if you want to split your time up between work and something else in your life. And so just be okay with that. Be okay with searching and looking for new things, because it's super important, and it lets you, just open your mind and open your opportunities to something new. And you never know, that could be the thing you're passionate about. That's kind of how it was for me. I liked restaurants, but it didn't feel like the right fit. And now I'm in something that I love so much more. Next up is going to be lead with kindness and empathy. It's super important that you lead with kindness and empathy, because there's so much culture, looking at restaurants and being the badass chef, or being the person who throws the pans or the plates or blows up in service, or trying to be someone that's super like just, very just like present and very like present, but very demanding and demeaning towards your staff. And that's not how you're going to get people to lead, or that's how you're going to get people to follow you when you're a leader. And that, I will not follow anyone like that. I made it a very clear personal point that I won't follow someone that's going to yell at me or disrespect me. And kitchen culture is changing, and as you get in the industry, you might hear some horror stories from before, or you might hear like how things might have been worse before. But there's still room for people to be rude and demeaning and poor leaders in the industry. And so, what you need to do is lead with kindness and empathy. You cannot go in the kitchen and be arrogant, and you can't be rude, and you can't be demeaning, and you can't just be like, oh well, I'm just going to prove everyone wrong, and I'm going to be rude about it. And as I'm climbing up, I'm going to push everyone else down. That's not how it works. Like I said, it's a team mentality. And more importantly, like, no one's going to want to work with you if you're rude, or if you're an ass, or if you're just, straight up being mean to someone. So lead with kindness, be empathetic to others. Everyone's going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So when someone else makes a mistake, don't look down on them, because guess what? Your mistake's coming right around the corner. And yes, mistakes can be annoying, and yes, mistakes can lead to you having to work harder, or things might not be set up for service. But you're going to be at that point too, and you're going to not want other people to be like, oh, you suck too. Like, just be empathetic that everyone's not perfect. Be empathetic that, for me, a big thing is I was super passionate when I started out. I'm still super passionate, but I was passionate to the point where I was like, if someone's on my team and they're not grinding as much as me, or they're not as passionate about this as me, like, I would get upset. I would get angry. Not everyone has to have the same passion level or the same excitement as you do. It's not like everyone's degree of importance in food and work and life is all different. We all have different things that matter to us, more or less. We all have different things that we all want to focus on more or less. And so because someone doesn't see it exactly like you do doesn't mean they're wrong, or doesn't mean they're lazy or weak. It just means that they see it differently. And maybe they have it more right than you, because you might be upset about your work-life balance, and you might be upset about not being able to go home at a certain hour. And so just relax, focus on you, be empathetic that everyone sees it like you, and it'll be all right. The next thing is staying curious, because even at 10 years being in food, I'm so far from where I want to be. I'm so far from where I can be. And whether that's like personally with like leadership skills, with like understanding business concepts, to technical skills like knife work, or just cooking in general. I'm so far from where I want to be. I know I have so much to learn. I'm open to hearing other people's, I'm open to hearing how other people do things. And, it's beyond that too. It's like, just personality wise, I've shared this so far in the episode that for me, when I got in the industry, it was very hard for me to get criticism. It was very hard for me to allow people to like tell me what to do. And even now I get, if someone tells me what to do or wants to like critique me or try to tell, not a, like, for example, if a colleague was like, hey, I think you should do this better, there's still that part of me that's like, well, why are you trying to tell me what to do? And just putting that wall aside, getting through that wall and being like, maybe there's a relevant point here, and maybe I just need to get my ego out of the way so I can get better. So staying curious and just understanding that you are so far from where you will be going, and you're going to learn so much, but it's it's years after years of work, and it's the process. And just, making sure that you're present and you're aware, and like I said, being kind, but also just being curious, even as you get years into this, because, I've seen a lot of people burnt out in the industry. They overwork themselves, and then they just lose their passion. They lose the passion to learn. They lose their passion to, try new things. A lot of people have, and this isn't just in cooking, this is in life in general, I've noticed, is that we all have things we want to do inside of work, outside of work, and a lot of times we often don't do them because we're so like just the daily grind gets to us. And so it's important to stay curious, stay fresh, and to have those other things you're working on. As you start in cooking, you might be worked more. It's kind of like this idea where you're like the new person, so you're going to be peeling vegetables and working a ton of hours. And, I don't really agree with that in all aspects, but we all start somewhere. And, there's going to be times where you are working a lot. So it's very important, in my opinion, to have those things outside of work, outside of cooking, that you have in your personal life that you care about, so that you can go back home to that and you can really realize like what is important to you, and what you need to work on, and what you need to focus on. And those things, those projects, that meaningful work outside of your career, that gives you just the ability to be okay and to refresh and recharge and get back to who you are as a person. And yeah, don't, for me, that's been the biggest thing. Having other things to work on besides work so I don't burn out. I would say next, show up on time, even early. I mean, I like to show up early, or don't be late. Like, be the person. Like, have your basics down in terms of you show up on time, you show up early, your station's clean, you're organized, you act professional, you dress professionally. Like, those are the basics. Like, have your basics down. We all have room to improve in our basics. I think. Like, I could always, be better in certain things, but showing up on time and showing that you want to be there and having that attitude that you want to be there is super important, and it will let you just, it will give a sense to those leading you that you want to be there, and it will start to give you a structure of, you taking yourself seriously and being important. And no one's going to take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously. And so that's the biggest thing. Show up with pride, show up with dignity, show up with the idea that you're going to have an impact, because oftentimes when you're starting out, it can feel like you're really not having an impact, but anything you do, whether it's peeling a vegetable, whether it's learning a knife cut and then adding to production, you are having an impact on that business. So show up like you are going to be impactful that day, and, make the most of that. So I think that's the best thing to get into next, is just taking care of physical and mental health. Like, when I started out in the industry, I did not take care of myself at all. I was, I had a large weight loss journey the last 3 years. But for the first 7 years of my career, I was, not eating right. I wasn't exercising regularly. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I didn't even care about my mental health, to be honest. And it all took a toll. I still deal with anxiety today. I'm healthier physically. Like, obviously I, work out, and I exercise a lot more. Like, I actually exercise. I never did during those first few moments in my career, the first 7 years. And I eat healthy, and I eat, better food. But taking care of yourself in the industry is hard. It's hard because, when you're working in restaurants, when you're working so many hours, like, it's stressful, it's tough, it sucks sometimes. And the thing that you want, at least for me, the thing I wanted the most was just unhealthy, delicious food. And after you work 60 hours a week, it's hard to go to the gym. After you work 70 hours a week, it's hard to motivate yourself to sit there and just, be present and be still and to meditate. And, you have such precious time sometimes. Why do you want to take an hour out of your day to go see a therapist? Or why do you want to, talk to, it's just all that stuff takes time out of the already limited time you have. And so I think it's just so important, though, that, when you don't make time for that, you burn out quicker, and it just leads to an unhealthy relationship with work, with life, and just everything else going on. So I can't stress it enough. Physical and mental health are such a priority in food, especially if you're working in restaurants. Like, when I was working, the most busiest I ever was managing restaurants, and by then I had gone through my weight loss, and there was improvement. I was seeing results. As I was getting healthier and taking more care of my body and my mind, I was able to function better, and I had a good amount of success during that time, managing restaurants. And I was able to just I had more energy, and I was more focused, and I was more diligent. I would do the restaurants, and I would also just do the podcast and line cook thoughts. And so, it's just, it all adds up. And so just being able to take care of yourself physically and mentally is super important, especially mental health. You're going to get in the industry, and, the conversations now are more about anxiety and mental health awareness and issues that the industry causes. And yeah, there's just so much that can happen in food, but, mental health is a very big issue still, and we don't talk about it nearly enough, and we don't have enough resources, at least in the States, to combat the mental health crisis that we have in our industry. And so being sure to keep your mind okay, and being able to take, it's easier said than done, because at some restaurants it's not okay, but being able to take that time you need and being able to align yourself with people that understand that. And I see the industry moving in that way, where more and more leaders and more employers are giving you the option to take a mental health day or take time when you need it. And I know some might laugh at that, but it's super important. If you're not well mentally, then you can't really function well in the kitchen, and you can't. Yeah, you might be able to do it for a short amount of time, but we do have a mental health crisis in food. The anxiety levels are extreme, and the stress levels are extreme, and we still have not addressed how we are going to handle it. So if you're just starting out, make sure you make mental health a priority, and make sure you take it seriously. And I know when you're young and you're like, I can do whatever, but I'm 24 and I have anxiety issues because of how stressful food has been for me. So just make sure you take the time to be okay with yourself, and to make sure you're doing okay, because it's important to do that. I would say next is just, it's okay to go and want good pay or benefits or health insurance, we're so often taught that the food industry is like nowhere else, where we can't, we need to suffer, we need to struggle, we're the outlaws of society. But if you want good pay, if you want good benefits, if you want health insurance, like there are positions out there like that, and they're meaningful as well. Like, don't think like just like it's okay to have that as a priority. It's okay if you want that. Like, you're gonna find out that health insurance is something that you might need. Like, what if you have like a chronic health issue later on in your career? Like, you will need that. Like, getting paid well isn't a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of you selling out. It's just a sign that you're getting paid a fair wage. And so there's a lot of talk sometimes that like you have to suffer, you have to put yourself through the gauntlet before you get any of that. And if you want good pay, or if those are things that are important to you, maybe you have a family, maybe you have other responsibilities in life, like it's totally fine to want those things. And so don't think because you want those things that you're lesser or weaker, even though in this industry it can be seen that like if you're not struggling or like pushing for something bigger while suffering, that you're not doing it right. Like, no, that's not the case at all. So if you do want stuff like that, that's totally fine, and that's totally okay. I would say like setting goals is a big thing. Setting goals on where you want to be, but being open to changing them if your interest in where your passion lies changes. Realizing that every sector in the industry has something to offer, and that you can go to any sector in the industry. But having goals on kind of short term where you want to be at your job, long term where you want to be, whether it's like career wise or financially or wherever it is. But having those goals set in place in your career helps you at least have a guide mark. Take some time to sit down and think about where you're going, because some people share with me, like, sometimes you'll be working, and the next thing you know, you're 5 years later kind of working at the same spot, maybe in the same position. So make sure you have goals, and make sure you're striving to always be growing, always staying curious, and always just learning and being willing to be open to change and being open to new opportunities. And like I said before, you're not selling out if you leave restaurants, like, and just realizing that like there's no like right or wrong, there's no higher echelon, there's no level above in terms of food. Like, people are just doing what they're passionate about. They're working in jobs that they need, or they're working in jobs that they're passionate about. And so not judging others for where they work, and just being able to go work wherever you want, regardless of what anyone else thinks, and be able to make decisions that you think are best for you, and no matter what anyone else thinks. I think that's integral. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on, if we leave a certain position or we leave a certain type of work, that we're not, we're kind of selling out or not taking ourselves seriously. I touched on this before, and if you're just getting into the industry, you might not have felt this pressure yet, but I've talked to tons of cooks who have this imposter syndrome when they go and get something that's better for them, but they're like, well, why do I deserve this when everyone else seems to be pushing in other directions? And you need to do what's best for you. You need to stay focused, and you need to just like hone in on what you want to do, and that's it. I'll say the last thing, and this is something I struggle with, and this is something that everyone struggles with at a certain point, but it's just being okay with where you are in food. If I could go back to myself and just be like, hey man, like, yeah, you're like, keep pushing, keep working hard, but like, just be okay like with where you are, because it doesn't happen overnight. That's like the most true thing. When you're in the food world, it takes time. It takes time to learn skills. It takes time to learn how to work in a kitchen in a restaurant. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. Certain things you might be able to hack in other industries, but in the food world, it's very simple. You just need time and experience, and you need to grow. So be okay with where you are in your career. Be okay with the places you are, and kind of just enjoy the process, enjoy the time. Be hungry, keep grinding, keep growing, keep wanting to be better. But being okay with where you are is so important, because if you're never satisfied with where you are, and this is me talking to myself, maybe at this point, you're never going to have happiness and enjoyment. If we're always just pushing on to that next thing, like, we need to push to the next thing. Like, that's how I am. But also just being like, oh, this is kind of cool too, because I've definitely missed out on things that I should have enjoyed more, because I was so focused on what's next. So just being okay with that process. And the last thing is just have fun. The food world is crazy right now with COVID, with the labor shortage, with everything going on. You just need to go with where you're passionate and where that passion keeps burning. And so, like I said, just be open, go where you need to go, and just have fun and be passionate and stay curious, because the food world is always evolving. It's always changing. And the best thing you can do is be open to learning new things. I see it all the time. People just stuck in their ways, or people stuck in giving the same advice. Things are changing. In 10 years, this whole thing's going to look totally different. So just have fun, enjoy the process. And like I said, like, always, you're welcome to reach out to me. You're welcome to reach out to those people in your life that guide you. But just be happy with wherever you are, and just know that it's all part of the process, and know it's not going to happen overnight, but know that you're in an industry full of beautiful people and beautiful work. Like working in food, I've met the most amazing people. I've created the most amazing food. I've had the best experiences. So just remember that. Don't lose that. Don't lose that spark. Don't lose that passion, and just keep being curious and hungry and being present in the moment you're in right now. Thank you all for listening. Like I said, if you're just starting in food, this is my advice to you. If you're maybe just listening to see what I have to say, I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree. But either way, this is what I would tell myself if I were to start again. This is the advice I'd give, because as we keep moving forward, these ideas of talking about mental health, talking about being okay with working where you need to work, following your passion, I think it's so important. And I don't want this next generation of cooks to be lost, or just like feel like the food world has nothing to offer them because of COVID. And it does, and it might not just be in restaurants, it could be in anything else, but it's still a beautiful place to be in, and I'm still grateful I'm in food, and I'm still grateful for all the decisions I've made to stay in food. So remember that. Stay focused. You can always reach out to me at Line Cook Thoughts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. linecookthoughts@outlook.com is the email. And yeah, just know that at the end of the day, we've all started there. We've all been peeling potatoes. We've all cut onions. We've all been there. But you grow from it and you learn from it. And it's just the ability to keep staying hungry, keep staying curious, keep staying focused, and just keep staying passionate. I think that's been the biggest thing for me so far. So hope you all enjoyed. If you're listening on Apple, please leave a review. That would mean a ton. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe and leave a thumbs up. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I'm so excited for that. And yeah, I'll see you on the next Line Cook Thoughts podcast. Thanks, everyone.